Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Expert to Authority show. My name is Simone Vincenzi, and I'm your host. It's great to have you back. Today, we are talking about outsourcing and how you can improve your life balance as an entrepreneur by outsourcing, in particular using VAs. Is a topic that I love to explore because we've been using VAs for many years, and in particular, our guest today has a lot of experience from the VA point of view, from the to the entrepreneurship point of view. So then we can explore both. A couple of housekeeping before we get going. Number one is if you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any other incredible episode. And also check out the show notes because I got a few things for you. One in particular is our webinar conversion kit. You know that webinars are still the best way to get clients in your business, particularly if you're selling services, coaching, consulting, training. And a lot of people don't know how to create webinar presentation that are designed to convert. So check it out. It's only $30 and it will give you a template, which is slide by slide on how you can create a high converting presentation. So check it out. We have some bonuses included, only $30, and the link is in the show notes. Now it's time to introduce our guest. In fact, she's an expert in creating systems and business optimization, which leads to what everyone wants more of, which is time freedom. She's the creator of a virtual assistant certification and the founder of a VA placement agency. We're going to talk about achieving work life balance, delegating tasks to virtual assistants for personal and professional fulfillment. Please welcome Molly Rose Speed. Good to see you, Molly Rose. How you doing?
Hello, I'm good. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're gonna talk about outsourcing, but first of all, what is your tool that you cannot live without? You share yours, I'll share mine.
Yeah, so project management tool that I can't live without that I basically force all my clients to use is called Asana. It allows you to delegate tasks, set ownership, due dates, hold people accountable, converse without using your inbox. I think it's great. And what the beautiful thing about it is the free version can take you really far. I'm still using it 5 years later. So highly recommend.
Yeah, but that's what I want to ask you. It's like, why Asana compared to others? Because there are so many project management
So
tools.
many. I just fell in love with this one, and I have tested a lot of them. I'm kind of like you, an online app junkie.
So personal preferences.
Yep, personal preference. I love it. I think it's clean, it's easy to use, and it's easy to skill transfer. So I'm able to teach people how to use it pretty quickly.
All right, check it out. Disclaimer: Asana is not sponsoring this episode, so there is no affiliate links. You can just go and check it out and see if it is the right project management tool for you. My tool is actually I've been exploring with WhatsApp bots recently, integrating webinars with a WhatsApp bot to send automated reminders and follow up sales messages, and I love it, absolutely love it. It's called Wati. Wati.
Cool.
It's an application which integrates with a WhatsApp business account as a WhatsApp API, and it allows you to create WhatsApp sequences, automated responses, and it allows also your team talking about VAs. You get a VA to manage your WhatsApp inbox. You can now also have conversation with potential clients. So check it out. The link is going to be in the show notes. That's mine. What all right. Now that the tools, we shared our tools, we are here to talk about outsourcing. Um, Before we go into the do's and don'ts of hiring VAs, what people can expect, what are the best ways, just some of the things we will talk about today. How did you get into this field? Why?
Yeah. So about 13 years ago, I was 25 something. And I realized really quickly at a young age, I think I was lucky enough to realize this, that corporate America, as we call it here, is just wasn't going to serve me. The one thing it was lacking was time freedom. And So I quit cold turkey, quit the corporate finance job, and started what we all know now as a virtual assistant. Back then, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't as prevalent. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss had like basically just come out. And that was for outsourcing overseas, right? So I'm like, what am I doing? I'll just figure this out. And I became a professional virtual assistant and spent at least 7 years, still 13 years later, learning everything I could about serving the online entrepreneur. And I just fell in love with it. And along the way, I had so many peers seeing what I was doing. You know, I travel the world, work from a hostel, take all these cool photos, live life on my terms, and love the work that I was doing, and like, I want to do what you do. So I created a certification program called Virtual Assistant Academy, professionalizing the space for virtual assistants. And then about 4 years ago, our placement agency was born. And so now we have a full service training, certification, and placement agency for virtual assistants.
I love it, and I want to direct first everyone to the show notes. We'll talk about more about that later towards the end. But if you want to have an assessment layer tool to help you prioritize what tasks you could outsource in your business as an entrepreneur, um, uh, Molly Rose has created this assessment, which you can find at virtualassessmentacademy.com/outsourcing guide. It's a guide to help you prioritize what tasks you outsource. So check it out. The link is in the show notes. We'll talk about more about that
Yeah.
later on. So the question I have for you now, before we go into a bit more details, why do you think the VA space needed to be professionalized? What did you see to get into this start this mission?
Yeah. So I think for a long time, and I still hear it now, there's so many stories out there of people that have been burned by hiring the wrong virtual assistant. And it can be an expensive cost, right? So they're like, oh, I tried it. It set me back 2 months, or it cost me over $1,000, and it just didn't go well. And I just hear all these horror stories. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I started really paying attention to what I was seeing on social media and virtual assistants and what they were pitching that they could do. And it's not there. They're just picking. It's like I always say, a photographer picks up a camera and they become a photographer. It's like we pick up a laptop and we're a virtual assistant. And there's so much more that goes into it. And I argue that, entrepreneurs, they're usually their first hire is a virtual assistant. And it's usually becomes one of the most integral parts of your business. They're the gatekeeper. They're the front of the house. They're the person that's your right hand for several years until you can scale up to grow your team. So I saw a huge need in making sure that what people were getting as a virtual assistant was actually true. And
Uh,
they were
I'm
very,
100% with you. I'm 100% with you. I think I had all the possible things that could happen. Maybe not all, but a lot of the possible things that could happen with VAs by having them disappearing from one day to the other with
oh,
all
yeah.
the access to getting paid up front and not showing up and not doing any work, or them saying, yes, I can do something for not being actually able to do it. All this in between. And I'm curious for your perspective, because when you're finding virtual assistants, you can find, and I think there is a dilemma for a lot of people sometimes. Shall I hire someone local, or maybe from my own country, or maybe like a US virtual assistant, or someone, in my case, the UK, or shall I go overseas? Maybe I hire someone from Philippines, from India, where from South Africa, where I know actually I'm going to pay less. So,
Right.
what's your view on that side?
Yeah, I think that there's two different levels, I'd say, of virtual assistants. Not to say that overseas VAs can't excel to what a US based or a UK based virtual assistant can do, but the I'd say UK, US based, Canadian virtual assistants, you're really getting a trusted partner, right? You get to know them, you're on Zoom with them. Um, the trust level seems a little bit higher than when you're hiring someone overseas, as well as the communication barrier. Sometimes, I'm not saying everyone, but in general, that's what happens. So I find when I'm outsourcing to places like the Philippines or Pakistan or Bangladesh or down south, wherever it is, I have to be very, very specific about what I am outsourcing. For example, I want a guide with these colors, this font, this copy. Here's the photo stock. Basically, do it for them. They just have to pretty it up. Versus in the US or UK, you're saying, here's my vision of what I want this to look like. Here's some copy, go for it, right? Just a simple tasks that I'm using as an example there. So a lot less guidance can be given, a lot more trust in the execution, and then they can kind of grow and scale with you.
What do you think this comes down to? Is that like background, experiences? What do you think this comes down to? This difference?
In general, I think that a lot of it's the culture and the language barrier. I think that that's a huge proponent of it, and then the education level, just innately coming out of the States or coming out of UK, Canada, I think is a lot different. I find that a lot of the virtual assistants are college educated or beyond that just want the flexibility, and it's a little bit different overseas. But and I think you just have some different level of communication and trust from the beginning, so it just works out. Far too many times my outsourcing to the Philippines is an example where I have to go through 3, 4, 5 VAs to find the golden ticket. And it's great when you can do that. It just takes a little bit more time, and so that's
I
what I'm
agree,
trying.
I agree with you, and as you mentioned, these are general point of views. Like
Yeah.
you can always find a gem, or you can always find a person that has a perfect English, that their background is great, they can get your vision. But I think that it comes down to a lot of like cultural differences as well, where you don't have to explain the elements of your culture to
Yes.
someone that is part of the same culture and speaks the same language. And they both have a place. They
Yeah.
both they have a place, as we are discussing. So now that we have put this out of the way, because I know I wanted to address this because I know it's a conversation that many people don't want to have, but actually they always ask in private. So I'm like,
Oh, yes.
let's actually have this conversation. Let's talk about it. But when you're outsourcing, when you're finding a VA, what are some of the best practices at this point? Because you know, you can I know people that had incredible success with their VAs. Doesn't matter where they were from, whether they were local or abroad, and people that had car crash experiences. So let's look at some of the best practices.
Yeah. So I'll start at the beginning, and that starts with the entrepreneur or business owner that's doing the outsourcing. Uh, the reason they're hiring a virtual assistant in the first place is because they're overwhelmed, right? They're so overwhelmed that they don't even have time to get the virtual assistant. So that's a problem in its own that you have to really take the time to set aside. And then you have to become really clear on what you need and why you need a virtual assistant. We have a lot of clients coming in and they're just like, why? I'm so overwhelmed. Well, we have to spend a whole, consultative hour with them, pulling out of them what they actually need, what systems they have in place, what they need in place. What kind of virtual assistant do we need for you? So I think it's like writing your own job description. I think that's super important. Knowing little things like what time zone are they in, if that's important. Do they need to answer the phone? Do they need to be available for email certain hours of the day, team meetings? Do they need to know these 6 different softwares? Are they a Microsoft user or are they a Google Drive user, whatever that looks like? So all those little things make up the unique person that's going to work for you really well. So that's the first thing. And then when you go to onboard your virtual assistant, just like I said, you don't have the time to hire them in the first place, but you have to make sure when you're onboarding someone, this is one of the biggest breakdowns I see in the client virtual assistant relationship, is not having a professional onboarding experience. So I recommend 60-day onboarding period that starts with a really good deep dive where you're bringing this person onto your team, and I don't care if it's just you, it's your business, your baby, and you're bringing someone into it. So they better know your vision, know why you're doing, what your services are, who your client is. All of that cultural stuff of your business is very important, and don't look past that because it'll just strengthen the relationship and their ability to really support you. And then also have a call just dedicated to password handover. You know how frustrating it is when you're a VA and you're trying to log into someone and the 2-factor authentication happens and your client's out of town and a week goes by. I mean, I can see, yeah, that's super important. And then from there, for the following 6 to 8 weeks, have those weekly check-ins, have those, beginning of the week, what needs to be done on both sides of the team, right? You and the VA, because there's things that they're going to execute that they need you to do something first. That needs to be recognized. And then at the end of the week, what went well? What did we get done? What needs to be improved on? Start that process early, because it's way easier to start doing that than to go backwards. So that's just a few of the things. I'm kind of rambling, so if you have some
I
questions.
want to unpack a few things because
Yeah.
there was in there. So number one, you have your list, your checklist. What kind of person you're looking for? I don't know if you ever had experience with this, but people wanting to find this like fictional character that is able to be detail oriented, that is creative, that has a great eye for design, that is also attention to detail, that can do contracts at the same time. It's
The
great.
unicorn.
It's great. I'm like, this person doesn't exist. You don't think if it existed, it would probably and it would
Yep.
not probably be a VA anyway. So it's what do you have to say about like the expectations that the people have?
Yes. So this is a great topic. So that's why I think we get really clear on what the role will entail, knowing that the person's probably going to grow into that, right? So can they do 25 to 30% of this now? And you find a good quality, great person that you mesh well. No, when I started 13 years ago, I didn't know what I know now. I grew as my clients grew. So I think that's the key to kind of look at. Could this be a person that's going to help me figure this out as we go and is willing to learn and have them grow into it? And then you have that person on your team that's helping you scale.
Yeah. So make sure that you are clear about what kind of things you want to outsource, what kind of personality as well you want.
Oh,
You're,
yeah.
you're looking for people of different personalities based on the task that you want to outsource. You mentioned also about the onboarding process, about a
Yeah.
60 onboarding process. Someone hears that and it's like, oh my God, like I need to spend 60 days to onboard a person. Can I just give them the task and say, hey, can you go run with it?
Yeah, you certainly can. What I'm trying to instill in the virtual workspace is more than that. Like, it's not just a person that's your tasker. It's a person that's a part of your team that you want this person to care about your business just as much as you do. That's like sweating it if the email went out wrong with the wrong name, or oh my gosh, we have this big project. I'm so excited to see what the results are. That doesn't happen just by tasking someone. So you will get far better results if you bring them into the fold, and just kind of welcome them into your business and grow grow slowly together. And I see great success.
No, that's I think the key. What you said here, which is not like task dumping, because if
Yeah,
you see someone as a task dumper, they will treat you accordingly. It's like, well, you're dumping tasks on me, so you don't value me. As soon as I found something better, then I'm gonna move to
exactly.
something else because I don't care enough to stay. But if
Yeah.
you're spending time with them and you get to know them, they become part. They get to know you and your business, and they actually start caring. They're more likely to stick around for a longer period of time. So, what I'm hearing you saying is an investment of
Yeah.
time that you're putting in these 30 days. You need
Yeah.
to
Your retention will be far longer than you probably would have ever expected. I've had clients for 7 years, and that's what I'm starting to see my VA teams do with their clients. And also, we all know in business, things come up, stuff hits the fan, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you need someone. They're going to be there for you if you treat them the right way.
Yeah, 100%. And let's talk about the last thing which you mentioned, which was that review, like the check in the beginning of the week, and the review at the end of the week. Do you have any tip to make this like start and end like effective from best practices or things that you're doing, maybe from your experience of working with your clients?
Yeah. So all clients are different. Some want to hop on a call on Monday morning and Friday morning, right? Let's start the week and end the week. Some are like, wow, we don't have time for that. So I really recommend at least one Zoom call, even if it's 15 minutes, that happens before Tuesday at noon, before you really get into the rest of the week. Just kind of going over what's on each other's plates. Using a tool like Asana can be really, really good for this, and having due dates and realistic what's going on in your personal life, what's going on in your work life to maybe get in the way. Just having that conversation basically clears up the expectation that things are going to get done. And then at the end of the week, you can look back and assess why are things red? What happened? Did we overcommit? What got in the way? And it just keeps the communication open and the accountability there. And if you set that accountability from the beginning, it's far easier than doing it later. It'll come through as aggression versus this is just how it's always done. So I find that being really valuable.
And and as you mentioned, like people they want to operate in different ways, but at least having that points of contact doesn't matter how you want to have it. But definitely one of these points being a call that will make a huge difference and set the tone. Set the tone for how you're going to operate with it so that it becomes part of your routine.
Yep.
And I gotta say also, it's not just useful for your VA, it's also useful for you.
Yeah.
Because we like you know, as entrepreneurs we have so many things in our mind, and so many projects that we are responsible for, that actually having the task to report to someone else, I find personally
Oh, yeah.
when I have to tell my assistant what she has to do, or when we are discussing what task do we have, it helps me clarifying my priorities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're way more productive when you have someone that you're holding accountable. As weird as that sounds, but it's like, well, I don't want to waste this resource or their time or their hours. I have to be ready for them to execute. So yeah, makes us all efficient.
I had to force myself to think a few steps ahead, and I
Hmm.
to be last minute that bloody calm. I'm like the last minute of the last minute of the last minute. So it has been a stretch, big stretch for me to go into that, but it helped. It helped massively. It helped
Yes.
massively. So, what kind of tasks do can we outsource? Can we outsource like anything and everything at this point? When you're getting a VA?
Yeah, just about, and that's where I have conversations with the VAs. I'm like, you're no longer a VA if you're web designing, right? You're a web designer. But a lot of virtual assistants, the ones that I train, we get take on those general tasks. So I call them gatekeepers, but managing your inbox before you even touch it, scheduling to a T. Everything's perfect. Your Zoom links are there. Your notes are there. The person's invited. They've been confirmed. All of that stuff can be taken off of your plate. Travel booking, email manage or like email marketing, setting broadcasts or putting forms on your website for intake, responding to inquiries that come in for business. There's tons of doing research for you, tracking your engagement online, what's working, what's not, being the point of contact for any of your direct messages online. I mean, there's tons of stuff. And then as the virtual assistants gain more knowledge, that's where I see them start to specialize. They might become great at online course creation or funnel creation or websites, as I mentioned, or podcast production, and they can kind of start to niche into what they want to do. So that's cool too, that you just know that a general virtual assistant, as I mentioned at the beginning, can kind of also develop those skills that I mentioned at the end. Just give them the chance to start to learn with you.
Yeah, I like what you said is like setting almost like the foundation first of outsourcing those tasks that anyway they're always there.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of they happen in the same way, and having someone else that can take them off your plate,
Yeah.
like booking, scheduling meetings, responding to emails, managing the inbox, all these things. They already just if you use a VA for just that part is gonna give you back at least 10 hours a week.
Yep.
At least, because by the time you go in, puff around, message this person, respond to this other email, reschedule this meeting, something simple as that, at least 10 hours a week, they're back in your play. I think it is a good time also to remind everyone about the resources that you have, which is the outsourcing guide, which you can find at virtualassistantacademy.com/outsourcing guide. The link is in the show notes or in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. And that's where you can also find what task should you outsource right now, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you're for?
Yeah. So, one of the best things to do is just walk through all the things that are on your plate, and whether that takes you a day, a week, or a month, depending on the cadence of your business, you'll start to realize, wow, this is all the things that I do. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing to really scale this business. And people do this for years and they realize how much time they're wasting. So this guide will walk you through kind of getting all of that out of your head, as well as a bunch of suggestions of things that VAs can do for you that you're probably not aware of. And then you can start to prioritize what you need to outsource first.
All right, make sure to check it out. It's virtualassistantacademy.com. /outsourcing guide. Now, I want to ask you, where do you start in terms of hiring a VA? Because I'm
Yeah.
sure there are multiple places to start. So one of these could be actually your agency. But
Yeah.
what is the starting point?
Yeah. So once you get clear, there's so many places to find virtual assistants. There's agencies like mine, virtualassistantmanagement.com. There's places like Upwork or Fiverr. And you've probably heard of those. And that's probably where people are like, oh, I've tried this, I've tried this. But if you need a very specific thing done, I really recommend going there. For example, I need a video cut, or I need a guide created with very strict direction. That's a great place for that. I'm a firm believer of using your network. I think that there are amazing people 1 or 2 degrees away from us. So if you're clear on what you need and you're sharing it with your buddy that you're having a beer with on a Friday or a networking event, you're like, hey, I'm looking for a virtual assistant. 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get that email from someone that's like, hey, I met so and so, heard you're looking, would love to meet with you. It happens all the time. And then lastly, if you feel like opening the floodgates and putting this post on social media, you can certainly do that. Just be prepared to have a lot of intake, right? A lot of probably job applications that might flood you. So be very specific with how you want people to apply if you're going to do it that way.
So, and how, so there you have a few different ways.
Mm-hmm.
How do you filter? Is there a way for someone to filter from the get go? Who is going to be someone who's more likely to be the right person? And of course, you never know if it's the right
No.
person until you try, right? But is there a way to scout before you jump on a call with someone or filter for application that you found that really works?
Yeah. So I always put something at the end of the job application, like email me with this subject line, and make it something really obscure, like pink unicorn waiting for you or something, right? Like something that's just, they had to have paid attention to the details. So make their first job interview part how they're going to actually reach out to you to book a call for, or to send your resume over. So whatever guidelines you want them to do, like please include this, this, and this. Please include, if you're doing social media graphics, have them give you a portfolio. You can ask to show your work. It's a lot easier when it's something that's visual versus creating a funnel or something like that. So I think that's a good way to do it. And then you can also start slow. So you can say, hey, for the first month, I'm investing 10 hours of time. This is the 2 tasks I want you to work on. And then we'll be able to kind of go from there. So there's ways to kind of get comfortable with it before you full on bring someone in.
So you don't have to commit to hire someone full time straight away.
No,
And,
no.
right. Go ahead, please.
And nor do you have to ever hire someone full time. So the other beautiful thing about hiring a virtual assistant is fractional assisting, right? I argue you shouldn't hire someone for less than 5 hours a week, 20 hours a month, and then just go up from there. So for just 5 hours a week, you can get a lot done. And so that doesn't break the bank as much as having to hire a part-time or full-time person to be on your team.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember even when I started with my virtual assistant, we started with 5 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were doing. I know, mainly because that's what all the money that I had. I couldn't afford more.
Right. Yeah.
And, and then we moved it to 10 hours a week, and then 20 hours a week, and then moved it to full time. And then we've been working together since. So it's
Awesome.
yeah, it can create great partnership, and in particular when you find the right person that really cares about your business and you care about them and their development, it become such a pillar of every team, of every team
Absolutely.
and your business. I have now a last question before we wrap up, which is almost like a scenario that I like to ask this question that people ask privately, but they don't generally talk publicly, which is what happened now if the VA that you've trained, you've done your 3 months of onboarding, and you've trained, and maybe you've been working together for 6, 8 months. They started getting some good responsibility, going to a stride, and then they say, "Thank you very much. Found another role. Goodbye." And now
Yeah.
we're left back to square one after spending the time having trained someone And that's definitely happened. Anyone had hired anyone anyway.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Person, physical person in the office. We all had to go through this, which is incredibly frustrating and annoying. Still got PTSD for some situations, but how do you deal with that situation or help you prepare so that
Yeah.
you feel like left in the dark?
Yes. So we call this the human element of this. And I have to deal, we all have to deal with it. Anyone that hires anyone. So a few things, and I also say to those that aren't maybe financially ready to hire a virtual assistant, you can prepare now and you can prepare while you have them. So for example, if you're doing repeatable tasks that you know you're going to end up having an assistant do, there's a tool called Loom. I'm sure you've probably mentioned it as you talk about the tools at the beginning. And it screen records what you do for $10 a month or free, but I highly recommend the $10 version. Just start recording your practices. Like, this is how I schedule the podcast. This is how I upload it into this, whatever it is, right, for you. Or and this will start creating this training deck for you. So anytime someone comes in, at least there's resources on how you want things done. Now, if you have a VA you've had for 6 months, start to make that a part of their job, probably 3 months in. Like, hey, start documenting what you're doing. Start SOPs, or if you're using something like Asana, create the templates. So every time we're doing something, it's the same repeatable task. I think that can be super helpful. And then the last thing I want to say is, you're still the business owner. So don't get so far removed from your day-to-day operations that if this person leaves, you don't know what to do. So at some level, know how to do the stuff that keeps your business afloat. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I agree with you. There is this balance between outsourcing everything, and of course, you don't need to know how everything works in your business and how to do everything. But having a foundation of the most important parts and components of your business, so you're not always relying on someone else in case you need to plug a gap, that becomes really vital. Otherwise, it becomes very expensive very quickly. Because if
Yes.
you hire someone every time you need to make a like change a comma somewhere, I get ready for a lot of money to go out. And if you're in that position where you're in that kind of business, great. But otherwise, know how to do at least the base, the foundational parts of your business.
Yes.
And I love also your suggestion to get your VA and also to document all these repetitive tasks. So that if someone leaves, then someone else can come in and then say, okay,
Mhm.
tutorial, here's a training, go through this, and then it can get started. So then the time in between is less and less every time you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Uh, Last question before we wrap up: is there something that we should have talked about that we have not mentioned so far that would be really important in the context of hiring a VA, finding a VA, and what we mentioned so far?
Yeah. So I'll leave you with this. Communication is extremely important when you're working, especially with a virtual team. So what I mean by that is, imagine being a virtual assistant being tasked via Zoom, email, Google Chat, text message, Asana, Excel spreadsheet, you name it. And this happens. I've lived it for years. And I'm like, what is going on? So pick 3 very clear communication channels, one for your day to day. I call it Asana. It could be Monday. It could be whatever you want it to be. 2, pick your channel for your daily communication. So I like Voxer. It's a walkie-talkie app, but it could be email, whatever that is for you. And the third is your SOS channel. So when my client calls me, I know I got to answer, something's going on, right? It protects the clients, or it protects the VA's time to be very, very efficient, and it'll protect the client's resources because the VA won't have to disseminate all these task lists and all this crazy stuff all over. It's extremely important to have a system when you communicate. So don't look past that.
Yeah, importance to having a system, having a good schedule of communication. So all you said, that's absolutely fantastic. And as you mentioned, clear communication is crucial. Clear
Mhm.
communication is crucial. It will help not only to make sure that actually the person that you hire is going to do exactly what you want them to do, but also will help with the longevity of the relationship. Because the reason why, if you work in a way that frustrates them, they're going to find someone else that doesn't frustrate them as much.
Yes.
We can always look at what we can control and how we can show up best for the people that we hire, virtual assistant included. Rose, I know someone is inspired and say, okay, it's time for me to hire a virtual assistant. I would love to see maybe how I can use your services. Tell more about the services that you provide, so then people are aware that are listening or watching the show.
Yeah, so we offer a consultative approach to hiring a virtual assistant that's perfect for your team. All of our VAs are certified by me. They go through a strict training process. So we verify their work and what they do are able to do for you. So we welcome you to book a 15-minute discovery call on our website, which is virtualassistantmanagement.com, and you'll get our whole process, and you're placed with a dedicated virtual assistant. It's not like you get some task list and you don't know who you're going to get. Someone becomes a part of your team, just like I've been echoing throughout this podcast. So would love to chat with anyone that's looking for a VA.
All right, so it's virtualassistantmanagement.com. That's
Mhm.
the website. You can find also the link in the show notes. In the show notes as well, you can find the social media links as well from Molly Rose, and also the outsourcing guide, which it will help you prioritize what task to outsource first. And it's virtualassistantacademy.com/outsourcing guide. Again, that is going to be in the show notes. Molly Rose, it has been an incredible interview. Again, thank you very much for being with us. And
Yeah.
let's everyone outsourcing.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check the resources in the show notes. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you haven't left a review yet, leave us a review. Good 5-star review is good for the podcast. It's good for the guest. It's good for my ego. It's good for everyone. So subscribe, leave us a review. And until next time, remember that together we grow exponentially. Ciao.